broadcasting live out of a basement in Appleton, Wisconsin. You're tuned into Fox Cities Core on WCZR Code Zero Radio. We're the show that gives you an opportunity to call in and be a part of the show. Our call-in line is 920-358-0795. Core. Hello everybody, welcome to Fox Cities Core. If this is your first time tuning in, WCZR is an independent streaming rock station based out of Appleton, Wisconsin. Tarl Knight, he's been here before. He's a talented artist and co-owner of the Tarlton Theatre in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He's helped transform the historic 1920s theater into a lively community center. Tarl's love for the community motivated him to create the Shipyard District Inc., which is an organization to revitalize downtown Green Bay. I'd like to welcome Tarl Knight back to Fox Cities Core. How are you doing, Tarl?
Good, very good. Thank you so much, Andy. Thanks for having me back.
Well, the last time you were here, we talked briefly about All Bands on Deck, and that came up really, really quickly.
Yeah, it did, and it always comes up quickly. We start planning for the next year, the day after, and then it seems to be right there again.
For people that didn't see your last appearance on the show, do you want to briefly talk about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm Tarl Knight, and I'm one of the owners of the historic Tarlton Theatre, downtown Green Bay. As part of the Tarlton venue family, we've also opened the Truck Yard at the Tarlton, an outdoor live music venue, and food truck destination park. And that's something that's developing in its first phase of development. By the NFL draft in April of 2025, we will have started or hopefully finished phase 2 of development, and that'll be Green Bay's first food truck park that's fully developed with stage and bar and food truck options. In addition to that, we opened almost 1 year ago today at the Tracks, which is a small live music venue on South Broadway, downtown Green Bay. And all of those live music venues fit into our mission and hope and vision for our community in Green Bay, Wisconsin, revitalizing the downtown, bringing people together, creating new memories together, and celebrating history and arts and culture. As part of that, I'm also the director of the nonprofit Shipyard District Incorporated. Shipyard District Inc. was formed in 2021 with over 50 businesses throughout the area that's now called the Shipyard District and the Shipyard Neighborhood, an area that's been formally recognized and is working now in partnership with the city of Green Bay in order to revitalize this area, make it cleaner, safer, and brighter with more arts and culture. 50 years ago, you didn't walk down South Broadway without a switchblade, people say, and now it's bright and colorful, and there are wonderful business owners and neighbors coming together in order to make this a very special part of the city. Proud to be the director of that initiative. Proud to be the vice president of the Shipyard Neighborhood and investing in our neighborhoods downtown. And also one of the founders of All Bands on Deck through that organization, which is Green Bay's Mile of Music, music festival.
I am excited for All Bands on Deck. This is the fourth?
Our fourth annual festival.
It's crazy, and it's huge. Like I was trying to get all the bands to fit on the screen, and you can't see this, Tarl, but I've got all the bands on the screen right now, and there's so many bands that it's hard to read. Even when you released the list of the schedule, it was phenomenal. All the bands you had on there.
It's a fun deliberation every year about how to format that schedule and make it attractive as a promotion piece, but also fit everyone that's on there. You organize it by time or by venue or by band. And the approach that we take is let's get the full list and the full schedule out as early as possible. And that's what that graphic is. We have anywhere from 50 to 100 bands and 100 performances. So depending on the year, you can see, 50, 75, 100 local Northeast Wisconsin acts. It's a celebration of local bands at local businesses, all working together to revitalize this really local area.
So how did the idea for the All Bands on Deck Festival, how did that originate?
It originated with the vision for the Shipyard District in early conversations between business owners in that area of Green Bay along the river, very industrial, commercial and residential area. There's a new zoning there called Resindustrial, and that's being explored by the city in order to define this really unique blue-collar part of the downtown. It's just outside, so it's not the cool developed part. It's the really hip railroad tracks by the ships blowing their horns right by the Fox River, under the Mason Street Bridge. All of these bars have been there for 30, 50 years. And so there's a really cool working class, salt of the earth atmosphere there. The businesses said the coal piles have been here for 100 years, and it's time to move those. And it's time to put up some banners and some benches and bins, and let's paint some murals. Let's have some live music fill the air. We're going to take it into our own hands. We're going to start this initiative and push the city to catch up. And so we did that by forming this organization, totally grassroots. And there's not really a game plan for how to do something like that. But it came up in one of our early meetings that we need to have a flagship event, something that's going to really kick off this new initiative, announce to the city and beyond that this is now going to be a district, and whether we're legally recognized or not, this is what we're going to call it. It's based in a historical usage and industry in that area, shipbuilding, shipping, and right there on the river. Makes sense to celebrate it that way. All of these bars and restaurants have really great relationships with the live music scene, and so what better way than to invite all of our friends in the local music industry to come and celebrate with us, raise some money, bring attention to this area, pull together some community, and celebrate the kickoff. That's what we did. We called it All Bands on Deck, ship themed, and that was one of our better ones that we came up with. There's no shortage of ship and nautical puns, but All Bands on Deck is by far and away the best one. 50 bands came on board that year, put it together in 6 weeks, and pulled together $10,000, and that was a lot of fun. It was really exciting, and you didn't know what was going to happen. But we pulled it off. All of these great musicians performing in a South by Southwest, Mile of Music, Steelbridge Songfest style in each of the bars and restaurants. And so in that way, there's a philosophy of, instead of like a farmer's market where you pull people into the public right-of-way or an open public space, now you're bringing people into businesses, and they're spending money and buying drinks and seeing the kind of environment. I grew up on this street and saw this bar 30 years ago, and I can't believe what you've done with it. I can't believe how far all of you have come with these. This is so nice. All of you have spent so much money and time and passion. That's what this festival did. Besides having a great time buying a beer and listening to music, everyone connected. Everyone connected in a near spiritual way with this area that everyone has a memory in. Or, everyone had to sit on a bar stool waiting for their dad to get done with their beer 40 years ago. Or, was too afraid to go that far south of the tracks. Now everyone got to enjoy it together. And so that's the magic of that first year. And since then, it's continued to grow, and it's got a life of its own.
Do you have a lot of bands that played it in the past reaching out to play it again year after year?
Yeah, we have a submission process, and most bands each year continue to ask to come back. And the ones who don't ask, we reach out to, and they say, oh, I totally spaced it. I wouldn't miss it for the world, and it's great to see the community grow that way. We've got an environment and an opportunity for bands who play on Friday to go and come back the next day and see all the bands and their friends in all of these musical acts on Saturday. They promote each other. Many of the folks in our music community, because it's such a small world, perform in multiple acts. So sometimes you have a situation like Travis Pashak, the drummer. He's drumming for Holly and the Nice Lines, and then immediately running over to drum for French-Irish Coalition at another venue, and then running later on to drum for Country Holla later on that night. And it's a fun environment because you get to hang out with all your favorite music pals and check out all these bars and restaurants. I have a lot of freedom, and a lot is entrusted to me to create an environment with the festival by these businesses where we get to experiment with new connections. You wouldn't expect a punk band to play at a bar that normally has a clientele of folks in their 60s and 70s. But we get to cross-promote and expose and explore, new audiences liking new bands. And, most of the people involved in this really cool initiative are open to exploring like that and trying new things. And I'll play at that one. I'll play in this new place, and then the audiences really like to get to see who's coming to their home bar, or get to try new businesses each time. Last year I spent most of my time at Rum Runners and State Street Pub. This year my favorite bands are playing at Richard Cranium's and Overtime Grill and Pub. So I get to try and explore more of the Shipyard District each year. So it's really fun that way, and most of the bands do come back and get to have a different experience each time.
Well, I love the fact that it does showcase different places that people normally wouldn't walk into, which I think it's brilliant. Like looking at the schedule, the mix of bands. You've got Fun with Adams on Friday, which of course, if you're from Green Bay, that's just a band that's legendary in the Green Bay area.
Totally.
And then you've got bands like the Coves, like younger bands, which you do have a little bit of everything, and you get to experience different venues, like you said, different bars and stuff that you might not have walked into, and you might go there a different time when there's not a band, just to kind of relive that atmosphere and see what it's like.
There's
not during
something
the festival.
for everyone there. There are food and drink options for everybody. There are environments for everybody. There are indoor stages and outdoor stages.
Offhand, do you know some of the outdoor stages, some of the venues?
Yeah. The Public House, they have an outdoor beer garden, which is really nice. Rum Runners also has an outdoor beer garden. Richard Cranium's in years past has held their bands outside in their parking lot, which they had transformed into a beer garden around the time of the pandemic. Brewski's is outside. State Street Pub has a really, really nice beer garden area, allow dogs, and that's a really cool space that they've created. Overtime Grill and Pub, also beer garden in the back, and their parking lot this year. So they're preparing for a much larger audience than in years past. And then Saturday, noon to 3, at 8th Street Park, which is an out-of-the-way, kind of hidden treasure of that neighborhood that's explored and appreciated mostly by families and kids, because this neighborhood, although the houses are intertwined with bars and factories, this is a very high percentage family, residing area with a lot of kids who go to school. They get to hang out in the park. So here's a noon to 3 opportunity for families and all ages, including people without kids, to come and enjoy. Brass Differential is going to be playing noon to 3. We're going to have beer tent. We're going to have some food trucks. That'll be a good opportunity to kick off Saturday. And that's also outdoors in 8th Street Park. That's being sponsored by the Shipyard Neighborhood Association.
You also have, I think I saw some safe rides for people that might not be able to drive.
Yeah, the Safe Ride shuttle program is available there. We recognize that this is a festival people are going to want to drink. They're going to want to support each of the bars, and there's a social element here and a party element, and so we're going to have those shuttles available for free, sponsored by the Brown County Tavern League, and in that way you'll be able to go and visit all of your favorite bars and restaurants without the worry about being sober or responsible with driving. There is going to be on-road, on-street parking available for that weekend, so that you can leave your vehicle for a reasonable amount of time, and that way you can really celebrate and have a lot of fun. All bands on deck, let's do it. Something that's really unique about the Brown County Tavern League and Safe Ride Shuttle Program's relationship with the Shipyard District and our businesses are that because the Shipyard District is so full of bars and restaurants, and most of those bars and restaurants are Tavern League of Brown County members. Most of the board of the Tavern League of Brown County overlaps with the board of Shipyard District Inc., and the president of that organization sits on our board, and the former president of that organization sat on our board. And so we have a close relationship with them. What you have in this kind of partnership or relationship is folks who recognize that revitalization, especially in this area that's full of bars, and that comes with a stigma of bars, of the kind of activity that you might see in dive bars or areas that are full of taverns or pubs. They're committed to making sure that this is done safely. They're making sure to offer the kinds of incentives for people to be safe, for us to have a clean environment and neighborhood. We're reflecting constantly on how this is going to impact the neighbors and the residential aspect and our partners in the industrial sector. And we want to make sure that it's done the best that it can be done. So they're committed with those sponsorships in order to provide people with the opportunity to go and have fun while being safe. That's what it's all about.
Have you been given more kind of access to do what you want as the years went on, and you've proven that you can pull off such a big festival like this? Are you still struggling to get some of the resources that you need to expand this how you'd like to do it in the future, if that makes sense? That end part was a little wrangly, but
no, totally. I get where you're coming from, and let me interpret it in two different ways. The first is creatively. I've always had, as the creative director and the executive director of the organization, the really generous opportunity granted me by this board to put this festival together in the way that I think would be most successful to everybody, including the bars and restaurants, including the city and the community, the neighborhood and the bands. There are limitations that only I censure myself with. First I want to give merit to every performer and act that's on this bill and on last year's and the year before and the year before. We don't invite anybody to participate or vet the list and decide to include anybody who isn't going to be a good fit or doesn't have talent. And Green Bay and Appleton and our Door County and the Northeast Wisconsin region is just teeming with talent and skill. And so it's amazing that we have so many to choose from. But it's not always, to my personal taste, a very exploratory, creative endeavor, because the more artsy you get, sometimes the more niche or the less tolerant a majority of audience goers or concert goers are going to be. So we have to ride a line between what's going to be popular to people and going to bring people out, and also we want to invite music out that's we're interested in. So, for instance, we have a pretty good reflection of all genres and musical styles. We have punk here, we have country here, we have bluegrass and folk and rock and a little bit of metal. So we have a good range. We even have some reggae in there. We have some funk. We have blues. So there's something for everyone. But there's not as much punk as you would expect when you look at the kind of topographical genre map of Green Bay. A lot of the community musically is punk. And that's not totally represented equally here in this festival, because we want to be appealing to all the other genres, and we want to make sure that there's a fit for all the families and folks who come out to it. So, not always artistically eclectic in the way that we can explore without the tracks or the Tarlton, but there really is someone to see for you and anyone, no matter what your genre preference is, and that's something that is a lot of fun to explore. Get to create some connections with a lot of bands who we wouldn't normally have in these spaces, especially when it comes to cover music. This isn't an all-original festival, and so you get to hear some surprise hits and favorites. There are cover bands, and there are original bands, and some bands do both. In that way, I've always had the freedom to try and bring about the most successful festival that reaches the most amount of ears and interest.
How would you differentiate All Bands on Deck from A Mile of Music?
Well, the Mile of Music and All Bands on Deck have a lot of similarities and very similar goals, I think, and maybe I'm extrapolating or projecting, but I think that both have the community in mind. They intend to support musical interest and bringing bands in order to inject resources and energy and attention and focus into a specific economy. And one's downtown Appleton, and one is the Shipyard District, part of downtown Green Bay. So both in philosophy, or at least in some of the effects, very charitable. But I think that as a nonprofit organization that's very concentrated and who has a more charitable mission to revitalize an area that's been very overlooked for very long. I think the Shipyard District differentiates itself from the attitude of the Mile of Music in that only the businesses and bands are making money, and there's no private interest represented really in the organization of this. It's much smaller that way because there are limited resources compared to a big machine like the Mile of Music. This year, for instance, it's myself. And last year we had a team of 3, and this year there's a team of 1, and it's totally volunteer. So, it differentiates that way. I think also that the Mile of Music is an exploration of a lot of original acts, and All Bands on Deck is more of a celebration of community, which is full of cover bands and a lot of musical talent and skill that doesn't necessarily only exhibit original songwriting. So in representing all the best that Green Bay and Northeast Wisconsin has to offer, we're not excluding non-original bands. So there's a difference there. Mile of Music pulls in gigantic, wonderful, great, talented acts from all around the country and world, and All Bands on Deck is a celebration of local. So there's another limitation that we place on our philosophy. But in that way, we're a group of friends having a great time celebrating community together. There's no, I don't want to say outsiders, but there's no one who's so far removed from Northeast Wisconsin who's a part of this where they don't understand how much this means to us and the city of Green Bay. So that's a big deal. And then Mile of Music also has been going on for a very long time, over 10 years, and this is, I think less than half of that amount of time. So we're still learning, we're still growing. You asked a question earlier about finding the resources this many years in, and that's a good point because we want to continue to have conversations with people and entities and companies and organizations who want to invest more in the Shipyard District. There are our corporate sponsors who we've had on board and partners at the city and in all different industries about coming on board to support this really charitable event that does raise over $100,000 for these district businesses each year and bands, an injection into the local economy and a very specific local area of just one neighborhood. And we want to continue to invite people to do that. There are political differences that because we are a locally, politically, socially charged organization, nonpartisan-wise, but we are pushing an agenda of this neighborhood receiving the resources that it deserves, and sometimes even just the same amount as other parts of the downtown and the city. That can be a challenge, especially to local politicians, especially to the local political environment. And so because of that, there are sometimes political or social tensions where, the Shipyard District and All Bands on Deck as a big event in the community has been told to wait their turn or, whatever the case is. And our attitude as business owners and musicians is never really, we'll wait our turn. We're going to make some noise and we're going to have a great time doing it. And we're going to celebrate, and we're also going to push some social change, even at a very local level like that. So I think it differs from Mile of Music in that way. while I'm sure that there's some tension that can arise from the operations of a festival that large, I don't think the Mile of Music has the same attitude or mission. So those are some differences. I love what we've got going on, and if it became as big as the Mile of Music, that would be a wonderful opportunity, but I don't know how that would even work. I don't know if we would have what it takes in order to sustain that, because one guy or a volunteer team of 2 or 3 or 5 even, those are dedicated people, but I don't think dedicated enough to spend 25 hours a day. Well, you mentioned, a team of 3 last year, a team of 1 this year. Mm-hmm. Being the 4th year, does it get easier because you've done it before, or all of a sudden going down to a team of 1, is it more stressful than it was last year, even though you know a little bit more of how this is done? I think that this year was this solution of reducing to 1 volunteer director and member of the team was essential, because the team was always comprised of myself and my assistant director, Kylie Lacombe, who's a superhero of gargantuan proportions in the music community and Green Bay. She's my right-hand lady, and she came along on the vision that I had with these businesses for Shipyard District Inc. as pretty much a volunteer with me, and that was a favor to me and to the community. But when we opened at the Tracks last year, another live music venue, and then the Truck Yard, I keep putting projects in front of her, and she has a great time, and she loves working with bands, and she loves working on managing our program and booking at the Tarlton venue family. But then there's less time and attention she can devote to the charitable mission that's volunteer-based at Shipyard District Inc. She is still as invested and committed, as am I. She, along with me, live in the Shipyard neighborhood, in the Shipyard District, and so she's very committed to making sure that this is an area that she wants to live in, she wants to work in, and she's always got my back. But because we're 4 years in, I've learned as the director of this program all of the different aspects that it would take in order to bring to life. And this was something that I felt that this year I would take on instead of the alternative, which is don't host the festival. And how do we continue to organize and revitalize an area without consistency? And what a great loss that would be for the local music economy, where there's almost $50,000 being spread out throughout bands and sound techs and lighting techs and live music or arts and culture-based promotional organizations and press. So there's an industry that surrounds this thing, and because I didn't have the guts or the will to take it on, what a waste that would be. So I said I'll do it, and I would be happy to do it, and I'll do it every single year from here on until I can't take it anymore, if that's what it took, because I believe in it. And I'll do it for free. That's my vision for it, and that's what I love doing, is making this a community where we do it because it's the right and the fun and the important thing to do. And I believe this is important work. And if you come down and you're part of the 10,000 people throughout the weekend who's experiencing this depth of community, and you're seeing friends every 10 steps you take in that bar and then the next bar, and you take the shuttle and you see your favorite band and you see your other favorite band, and there's pictures and beers, and you know that this is worthwhile. And I think anyone would take on what I've taken on in order to see this come to life every year.
You've done so much for the Green Bay scene. I mean, at the Tracks you mentioned, you've got the Tarlton. We've got the In the Yard series, which was next to the Tarlton, which I finally got to attend with 4 on the Floor. Great show. Regret that I didn't get to attend more, but if people want to check that event out, there's one more this coming Thursday it's the last one, right?
It is.
Lost Shadows and Carlos Champagne and the Balcony Brothers, which if you want to see a fascinating band, I'm sure Lost Shadows is good, but Carlos Champagne and the Balcony Brothers I've seen, and they're very entertaining. That's a can't miss show, September 12th, 5 to 9 p.m., right next to the Tarlton, and there's a food truck out there. It's a nice setting, and the weather is going to be good, not only for that event, but Friday and Saturday for all bands on deck. You really lucked out in the weather category.
Yeah, I'm hoping that it holds out for us. Someone on our board has to be in charge of the weather, and I'm going to give them a raise. The In the Yard concert series was such a great thing to pilot this year. I had so much fun in visiting a number of really cool food truck destination parks and food truck rallies and similar offerings in cities throughout the United States. We just decided that Green Bay needed to have this kind of attraction, and we have this vacant property next to the Tarlton, and it's out of reach to develop something, in any financial range really, this early on, only 5 years into business at the historic Tarlton Theatre, but decided that we would develop something like a food truck park. This is our pilot and an exploration with the city of Green Bay into how we can develop a food truck park and a zoning for it, what kind of need there is for this kind of development, and exploring the city's reaction to it. Right now, it feels like a big success, and it feels like we're going to develop this thing, and this concert series is going to run annually. We're going to continue to bring great big acts to Green Bay on this stage. We're going to continue to develop the infrastructure of the yard to where right now, it'll be unrecognizable in 6 months, and then in another 6 months from then, in a year from now, it'll be even more developed, and we'll continue to invest in it. The series itself, as a pilot for attention and attraction to this kind of development, but also, as is the philosophy for all of our programming, a way to conjure up community and bring people together and enjoy affordable arts and cultural opportunities for themselves and their family at a reasonable price point in our downtown. That was a huge success because we have the help of Tom Johnson and Kylie Lacombe, who put together this great lineup from all around the country, people including the Super Suckers and Ha Ha Tonka and Flatfoot 56, Decent Criminal, Low Water Bridge Band, Blew Me Away, and Carrie Nation and the Speakeasy. What a great lineup, and we've had so much fun doing it. This last week is a new band to Green Bay, Los Shadows, but their opening support group is not a stranger to Green Bay or the Tarlton or at the tracks, and Carlos Champagne and the Balcony Brothers. It'll be great to close out the series. We're going to have more in the yard, in the truck yard, before the season is over. We're going to be hosting an electronic bass music show in October, and that'll be outdoors in the truck yard. There'll be fire, and there'll be flow art going on, and vendors, and that'll be a lot of fun. We're additionally hosting yoga in the yard, which is coming up in a couple weeks here. That's full moon yoga, so that'll start when the sun starts going down, and then you get a Lion's Tail Brewing Company beer with your ticket package. Additionally, we're exploring a Green Bay vintage market partnership to turn that entire yard into a big vintage market space, and I've seen that done in Rincon, Puerto Rico, when I visited there, and in Viejo San Juan, Puerto Rico, where these city centers and public spaces were transformed into big markets where you can go and haggle and have a good time picking up wares and things. So we'll do that. So we have more programming in order to capitalize on this space and invite people to the yard, not necessarily revolving around live music, but we're going to continue to keep that up. I think that this is going to be a lot of fun, especially in time for the NFL draft, which will be one of the biggest events in the history of Green Bay. This will be a really cool opportunity for people to feel at home. If they're coming from a large city like Miami or San Diego, they'll feel right at home at a food truck park, because those cities and most other major cities in the United States have one of these, a place you can sit back and relax and have a beer or a mixed drink or wine and visit a couple of food trucks.
It's going to be interesting, like just the traffic coming to Green Bay and the people that are looking for things to do after daytime events, and it's going to be wild. We had a comment from Colin, who's watching, And Colin said he seems to be a little nervous about Carlo Champagne, but he said that it's good that they've got the other band. He's excited for Los Shadows?
Los Shadows.
Yeah, he said he's excited for them nevertheless.
I'm always eager to see what Carlo Champagne and the Balcony Brothers and then another great band that I enjoy seeing, Leslie Jacobs and the Nazareth Riders. And I know Colin's in tune with what those groups are putting out into the world. And so you can tell Colin he's got nothing to be afraid of. These are top-notch acts.
So let's run over the details again for All Bands on Deck.
Yeah.
Give me the elevator pitch for the need-to-know details.
All Bands on Deck. It's the city of Green Bay's biggest live music festival. In the history of Green Bay, no number of bands this large have come together over a weekend in order to celebrate an overlooked area of our city and where we're going to take it. There's going to be a lot of color, there's going to be a lot of art, there's going to be a lot of music of all genres, for all ages, at a dozen different venues, maybe some of your favorite bars and restaurants transformed with live music. 100 different performances by mostly local groups. You've got Friday, Saturday, the 13th and 14th of September. You remember that Friday the 13th, we're kicking it off 6 p.m., and it's going to go to midnight both days. It's free, and there are opportunities to bring your family. There's opportunities to bring your dogs, and if you chart out your favorite map of bands from this venue to that venue, and then the next day from that venue to this venue, you can visit and try a dozen different beers or burgers or cheese curds or cheese steaks at a number of different venues throughout the entire weekend. Get the full experience of what it means to be in Green Bay Shipyard District, amongst the factories and the metalworking and the rail and the ships, and we're going to have a great time doing it. We've got so many great partners and sponsors on board. This is, if there ever was one, Green Bay's biggest and best community event where the most number of people come together for a common cause. This is the spirit of what it means to be in Green Bay.
Well, Tarl, I want to thank you for doing this. Obviously you've been very busy, and next week, the week leading up to this coming weekend, is probably going to be even busier. For a full list of bands, people can check out the website. And there's a Facebook website. There's also shipyarddistrict.org, and over 100 bands. Right, it's massive. It's going to be huge.
Yeah, stay tuned. Facebook, Instagram, the Shipyard District Inc., and our website, shipyarddistrict.org, like you mentioned, Andy. We've got updates coming to the calendar. Probably each of the next couple days before the festival, there may be little small changes. If you want to track where your favorite bands are playing, or stay tuned for updates on what bands may be joining the festival in the next few days, then keep your eye peeled. We'd love to see you, and we'd love to invite you down to the Shipyard District and the Shipyard neighborhood. We want you to come aboard with us for our fourth voyage into live music and community.